Most of you have already seen the slide. I had shared it a day before the actual session. Please pause if you want to have a look at it. If you happen to join this session for the first time, then you are welcome to this session. This happens to be our 7th session. We have already covered 50% of the topics that we wanted to assist you in learning for A1 level German, of course, for daily life. If you wish to join further sessions, then you can reach out to us at our email ID. Today's session can be divided in two parts. In the first part, you will be introduced to dative case. In the second part, you will get a short recap of the important topics from the last 6 sessions. You will notice that there will be slides in this video, in this session, which I will skip. You may pause it if you want to have a look at them. This is a disclaimer. You will be introduced to a new concept used in the German language in today's session. It is referred to as dative case. I hope by now you already have a good enough understanding of the nominative and accusative cases. Today you will learn about the dative case. So let's try to answer what exactly is the dative case. If you ask me, it comes into picture, the dative case comes into picture when there are two objects in a sentence. The direct object is considered to be an accusative case, and the indirect object in the sentence is considered to be in dative case. In simpler words, if you have a verb in a sentence and that verb is implying an action, then the object which is directly impacted by the verb will be considered in accusative case, and the indirect object which is being impacted or benefited, or you might say influenced by this action, that object will be considered under dative case. If everything what I just said went over your head, then you don't need to worry, you will get it in just a few minutes. Now, if you ask me, you will usually face 3 scenarios where you need to use dative, or where you will see people using dative. The first scenario is in case of indirect objects. Let us say you want to say in English, I am giving you a book, or I give you a book. And then in German, you will say, ich gebe ein Buch. I hope you know how to frame the sentence. The verb comes at the second position. The pronoun comes either before or after the verb. Here the pronoun happens to be before the verb. The object or the direct object, ein Buch, comes after the verb. Please note here you are dealing with unbestimmte article. I hope you know what that is. Now here your sentence describes an action, the action of giving, which is impacting a book, which is a direct object. Now to add more context, you might say that you are giving this book to someone. In this case, it can be a teacher. So the teacher here becomes the indirect object. I hope you could follow so far. Please note that the article used for Lehrer, teacher, is dem. We'll talk about the dative articles in just a few minutes. The second scenario where you need to use dative is with prepositions, where dative is the norm. Last week on Thursday, you learned about the preposition für. You also learned that whatever comes immediately after für usually is in accusative form. Similarly, there are some prepositions that require words coming after them to be in dative form. Let us refer to these prepositions as dative prepositions. Some generally used dative prepositions are mit, zu, nach, aus, außer. There are several others, but in my daily life, I use these more than the others. The third scenario where you need to use dative are some common expressions. For example, danke dir or es tut mir leid. Please note, dir and mir are the personal pronouns in dative form. On this slide, you will see some examples of sentences having two objects. Please pause the video here, read each sentence, and see if you can identify the direct object and the indirect object. This table gives you the personal pronouns in dative case. Please pay attention to the last row and the last column. The alphabet I of Ihnen should be in uppercase, irrespective of where it is placed in a sentence. This slide provides you the list of articles in dative case. All right, we will continue learning about dative case in the 8th session. But for now, I just want to do a recap of the last 6 sessions, because it is important that you have a strong understanding of previous topics. I will therefore now go through the key topics, the important topics from previous 6 sessions. I hope you know by now how to frame or write simple sentences. If you ask me, an extremely simple sentence needs two things, a subject and a verb. The subject can be either a noun or a pronoun. Let us try to frame a sentence with a noun. Then we replace the noun with its corresponding pronoun. Max schreibt is a complete sentence if you ask me. Here, Max is the noun, schreibt is the verb. I assume that Max is a man or a boy, so the correct German pronoun for him will be er. Usually, in a sentence, the verb comes at the second position, and the noun or the pronoun come either before or after the verb. Here, they are before the verb, so they take the first position in these two sentences. Once you know how to write a simple sentence, you should be able to write a simple W word kind of question. By W word, you should infer who, what, when, where, how, which kind of questions. What you have to do is place the W word at the beginning of a sentence, then comes the verb, followed by the noun or the pronoun. On the slide, you will see blue banners describing what I just said. Asking yes or no kind of questions is even simpler than W word kind of questions. What you do is you place the verb at the first position, then the noun or the pronoun, optionally followed by an object. Here I have added an object das Buch to the question. You know, das Buch means the book. I hope you know why it is das Buch and not the book or their book or den book. Again, the blue banners just indicate what I said. Here are some sample W word kind of questions. On the right side, there are some simple sentences which you may think of as answers to the questions on the left side. We will focus on the very first question. Was machen Sie? To sum up, in a simple W word kind of question, the W word here, was, is at the first position and the verb is at the second position. Before the question mark, you will find the subject. The W word can be wer, implying who, wie, implying how, wo, implying where, woher, implying from where, was, implying what, wann, implying when, welcher, implying which. Let us now focus on the second sentence on the right side. The verb comes at the second position and the subject is either before or after the verb. On this slide, you are looking at all the German personal pronomen or personal pronouns, or in German you call them Personalpronomen. Please pause if you want to have a look. Now, when you are learning a new language, one important exercise that you do, or you must do, is learning nouns in the new language. You do the same when you are learning German. But when you are learning nouns in German, you must, please understand, you must learn the nouns with the correct nominative articles. In German language, there are three articles, namely der, die, das. Der is the article for nouns which are considered as masculine. Die is the article for nouns which are considered as feminine. Das is the article for nouns which, you guessed it right, are considered as neutral. Many of you may think it is one of the difficult aspects of learning German. I don't agree 100% with you, or it might seem difficult in the beginning, but not as you progress. I personally think there are two reasons for this. Reason number one, as you keep learning new nouns with the correct article, you will start noticing patterns which will help you guess the correct article for new nouns. For example, nouns ending in or, ling, ig, ner are usually considered to be masculine. Nouns ending in ung, ie, ei, keit, sc, haft, t, aumlaut t, ik, tion are usually considered to be feminine, and nouns ending in chen, for example, Mädchen, ment, tum, ma, are usually considered to be neutral. Reason number two is, as you keep learning, there will be times when you will use the correct article for a new noun, not because you learned it, just because you heard it from someone else. Someone else was using this noun and you saw which article they used, and that's how you learn it. Please note the article for plural form of nouns is the. Please remember there the das are referred to as bestimmte article, implying definite articles in English. In English language, we use articles like the, a or a, and an. Article the can be referred to as a definite article. Articles a, or an can be referred to as indefinite articles. Similarly, we will learn indefinite articles in German as well. But as you already know, nouns in German can be classified as masculine, feminine, or neutral. So, ein is the indefinite article for masculine nouns. Eine is the indefinite article for feminine nouns. Ein is the indefinite article for neutral nouns. By the way, indefinite articles are referred to as unbestimmte Artikel in German language. Please remember, there is no indefinite article in German language for plural nouns. You have learned so far about bestimmte Artikel and unbestimmte Artikel in German language. German language also has Negationsartikel, which you can think of as articles that negate the nouns coming after them. Kein is the Negationsartikel for masculine nouns. Keiner is the Negationsartikel for feminine nouns. Kein is the Negationsartikel for neutral nouns. Unlike unbestimmte Artikel, we do have a Negationsartikel for plural nouns, and that is keiner. Alright, you know the different personal pronouns in German language. I can safely assume that. You now need to learn how to conjugate verbs based on which personal pronoun, Personalpronomen, or personal pronoun you use in your sentence. This is referred to as conjugating verbs in German language. If you ask me, I think you need verbs to do two things in general. First is you want to describe the state of a subject. For example, let's assume you're going out to buy something, and the place where you're going, you notice someone, and in your head you go, this woman looks pretty, or this guy seems handsome. Or you wake up in the morning, you go out for a walk, and you say, this is warm, it's warm today, or it's cold today. Here you are describing the state. So in German you might say, er ist hübsch, sie ist hübsch, or sie ist niedlich. Or for the weather you can say, es ist warm heute, es ist kalt heute. Then you have verbs which imply action. For example, verbs like tanzen, lesen, schreiben, reisen. Now let us try to understand what does conjugating verbs mean. If you ask me, it means changing the spelling of the verb from its infinitive form based on the subject. But you need to be aware of rules to conjugate verbs. These rules depend, if you ask me, on two basic things. First is the subject of the sentence, and other is the time. By time, I mean present tense, past tense, or future tense. For now, you can focus on the present tense. As I said, for now, you can only focus on conjugating verbs in present tense. Here, you need to be aware of three categories of verbs. These three categories are regular verbs, irregular verbs, and mixed verbs. Regular verbs are also referred to as weak verbs, whereas irregular verbs are referred to as strong verbs. Irregular verbs follow a fixed pattern when you are trying to conjugate them. Irregular verbs, however, do not follow a fixed pattern when you are trying to conjugate them. Three famous examples of irregular verbs are sein, haben, and gehen. Mixed verbs are a mix of the above two. They behave like regular verbs in present tense usually, but become irregular in past tense quite often. You should know three endings that let you identify several regular verbs. These endings are en, ern, and eln. Tanzen is a regular verb which ends in en. When you remove the en, you are left with tanz. This is usually referred to as Verbstamm, meaning stem of the verb in German language. Now, when the subject of the sentence is ich, you add the alphabet E at the end of Verbstamm to conjugate it. For do, you add st. For rsc, you add t. For ihr, you add t. For other pronouns, you keep the verb in its infinitive form. Wandern is a regular verb which ends in en. When you remove the en, you are left with wander. Again, this is referred to as Verbstamm. Now, when the subject of sentence is ich, you add the alphabet E at the end of the Verbstamm to conjugate it. For do, you add st. For rsc, you add t. For ihr, you add t. For other pronouns, you keep the verb in its infinitive form. Segen is a regular verb which ends in eln. When you remove the en, you are left with segel, which by now you have guessed it right, is the Verbstamm. When the subject of the sentence is ich, you add the alphabet E at the end of Verbstamm to conjugate it. For do, you add st. For rsc, you add t. For ihr, you add t. For other pronouns, you keep the verb in its infinitive form. I hope you know what infinitive form is of a verb. Now, you know you are using a verb in a sentence. When you do this, you are either describing a state of the object or the action done or being done by the subject. We just discussed it. You will now focus on the verbs which imply action, not the verbs which just describe a state. For example, lesen and schreiben. Sample sentences can be ich lese, ich schreibe. But quite often you would like to provide more information, more context through your sentences. For example, you may say Ich lese das Buch, ich schreibe das Buch. Here, the article das is the accusative form of the article das. I know they are same, but that's how you should understand it. But if instead of das Buch, it was der Vertrag, which means a contract, the contract, then the correct statement would have been Ich lese den Vertrag, ich schreibe den Vertrag. This happened because in these cases, you should use the accusative form of articles of objects in sentences. Here are a few examples of sentences with actionable verbs where you have objects whose articles must be in the accusative form. Ich lese das Buch, ich lese den Vertrag, ich lese die PDF-Datei. Please focus on the second sentence. Here are a few examples where the object of the sentence happens to be neutral. Ich lese die Bücher, ich lese die Verträge, ich lese die PDF-Dateien. Now this table, you have to remember this table. You would have noticed that the articles for feminine, neutral, and plural nouns are the same in nominative and accusative cases, but the nominative article there becomes den for masculine noun. Please remember this. One more time, this table provides you the nominative and accusative variations for bestimmte Artikel in German language. The second table corresponds to the unbestimmte Artikel. You will notice two more rows referred to as dative and genitive in each table. This is meant to give you a teaser of something that you will learn later. Now the third table gives you the accusative variation of Negationsartikel. The slide sums up our discussion on accusative articles for now. Okay, this is a standalone slide. How important is it? Very important for a beginner. What about an experienced learner? Even more important because it is about how you pronounce, how you speak, and there you should not make mistake. So whenever in a word you see IE, it is read as E, and when you see EI, it is read as I. So the third sentence gives you some examples. It's I's and not E's. It's meter and not mitre. It's reason and not reason. Please remember this. All right. By now, as part of your homework, you know several verbs to describe what you like to do, what you do not like to do. You can also talk about things that you need to or have to on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. Again, this was all part of your homework. But you must be wanting to say several things where you want to add more context, more information. What exactly do I mean by that? For example, most of you in Germany live in rented apartments. That means you need to pay rent. Most of you have to transfer the rent usually before or on the first day of the month. Now you can say I transfer the rent, but some of you will say I have to transfer the rent or I must transfer the rent. I hope you guys could follow. That is, there can be different situations. For example, you can say you speak English, that is, I speak English or I understand English. Or you can also say I can understand English or I can speak English. Now you already know how to say in German, I understand English, but I'm not sure if you know how to say I can speak English. Today you will learn how to do that. To be more specific, you will learn a new category of verbs in German language. These new category of verbs are referred to as Modalverben in German. Using this Modalverben, you talk about your skills, your obligations, your wishes, your wants, your limitations, your strong wishes, your weak wishes, and similar aspects of your daily life. All right, I believe that was enough introduction. Um, Pause the video and think if you know how many Modalverben are there, if you already have some understanding of German language. So here are the Modalverben. On the slide, you will see 7, but there are just 6 Modalverben. Möchten is not a modal verb. It is the Konjunktiv 2 form of the modal verb mögen, but people usually, at least I have seen that people use möchten instead of mögen. So please notice that when you start interacting in German with others. I will not go into detail of when to use all of these because we have already done them. We will have a short discussion about how to use them in a sentence. So the syntax looks like this. You have the subject at the beginning of a sentence normally. Then at the second position where you normally place the verb, here you will be placing the modal verb. It must be conjugated. And then there can be other things in the sentence. And at the very end, you have a normal verb. Verbs like sehen, gehen, singen, tanzen. These must be in their infinitive form. So it can be ich kann. So ich is the subject. Kann is the conjugated form of the verb können. Here you can have Deutsch. Ich kann Deutsch. Verstehen. So verstehen is the normal verb. Or ich kann Deutsch sprechen. Again, the normal verb must be in its infinitive form. The modal verb should be conjugated. This slide just gives information what you just heard from me. Again, this is for framing sentences. For question, I hope you know how to do this. You have the modal verb at the first position, obviously conjugated. Then you have the subject, and then you can have other stuff. And then at the end, you have the normal verb in the infinitive form. There is a question mark missing because it's a question. All right. Uh, you did a specific homework in previous sessions where you had to make a list of stuff that you find in your room. You then had to learn the German nouns for these uh, items that you find in your room, and you also had to learn the correct article, the gender of each of these articles on your list. Then you wrote statements like das ist der Tisch, das ist ein Tisch, das ist kein Tisch, or statements like das ist die Tür, das ist eine Tür, das ist keine Tür. Today, or in this part, you will learn articles with which you say statements like that is my table, that is my phone, that is my computer. Here are some examples that you have already seen. Please pay attention to the articles. Now we use articles which are referred to as possessive article. So mein, meine, meine. So instead of saying das ist ein Buch, you say das ist mein Buch. This means that is one book. Here you are saying that is my book. Here is the table that you need to remember. Mein, meine, meine. So you notice that the possessive article for masculine and neutral are the same, and for plural and feminine, they have same possessive article. Now, these are only for the personal pronomen ish or personal pronoun ish. You need to learn them for every other pronoun. This might look difficult, but once you do some homework or use it over a week, you don't have to go back to this table again. Here are the possessive articles in accusative form. The table before was for nominative form. As you can see, the only change that happens is for the masculine nouns. We'll just skip through the slides. You can pause if you want. All right, let me just go back. Okay, uh, you have learned irregular verbs. Now you should be learning trennbare Verben. What are trennbare Verben? If you ask me, they are verbs with prefix, and the prefix is separable. Some examples are abmachen, aufmachen, zumachen. Why do you need to learn them? If you ask me, because they are part of the German language. But I believe a better answer would be that they help you express your thoughts in a variety of ways, or you can use the same verb and you see that adding a prefix will change the meaning of the verb completely. For example, machen usually means to do. The verb aufmachen, if you add prefix to machen, the prefix is auf, then it is usually used to say things like opening doors or opening windows. Zumachen is used for closing, usually windows or doors. You believe have already heard statements like bitte mach die Tür zu, bitte mach die Tür auf, kannst du die Tür aufmachen? So I believe you have seen prefixes being used to change the meaning of the verbs. Okay, you should now learn how to use them. By that I mean what syntax you have to follow, or where is the verb and where is the subject, where is the object. You already saw these four examples in the previous slides. Let us try to analyze each of them, or in pairs. Please focus on the first two sentences. Here, as you can see, the prefix of the verb is pushed to the last position, just before full stop. The verb without prefix is at the second position, and it has been conjugated for the personal pronoun or personal pronoun ich. The subject is ich is here at the first position. The slide is presenting what I just said. Now, please try to imagine what I'm just saying right now. How will you change these two sentences, the first two sentences, into questions? Please pause the video if you want to write down your answer. So this is how it will be done. The prefix will still be at the last position, the verb without prefix, the conjugated verb without prefix, and the subject will interchange their positions, and the full stop will of course be replaced by a question mark. There you have it. I hope you could follow. Let us focus on the next two sentences. Here we are using a trennbare verb along with a modal verb. You already know how to use modal verb with normal verbs in a sentence. You can use the same logic for trennbare verben as well. The modal verb must be conjugated. Here it just happens to be its infinitive form because the subject is Z, capital SZ. I hope you know when do you need to use this pronoun. Again, the trennbare verb is in its infinitive form. Please remember, with modal verb, you don't need to separate the prefix. Again, this slide gives you the information which I just said. All right. I don't think it is important, but let's just go through it. How do you identify a trennbare verb when you hear it for the first time, especially in a sentence where modal verb is being used? Because there the prefix will not be separated, so you don't know if it's a normal verb or if it's a trennbare verb. Usually, if the prefix gets emphasized, then it will be a trennbare verb. If the prefix does not get emphasized, then it will not be a trennbare verb. Now, you will see verbs where there is a prefix, but it will not be a trennbare verb. So apart from hearing, there are other hints as well to identify trennbare verbs or trennbare Verben, as they say in German. Here you will see a list of prefixes which are usually separable: ab, an, auf, aus, and the list goes on. Then this is the list of inseparable prefixes. Then to make the learning even more fun, you have these outliers which are sometimes separable and sometimes inseparable depending upon the verb with whom they get associated. I will skip through it. Please pause if you want to read. All right, I guess that's all. That those were all the key points that I wanted to cover from the last 6 sessions. If you happen to have any question, if you think there was any mistake on any slide or there was a slip of tongue from my side, uh, please let us know. This is how you can reach out to us by writing us an email on practicalgermanteacher@gmail.com. Please understand that we offer free sessions every Monday and Thursday from 6:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. European time. So if you want to join, you can write us an email. Thank you very much for listening.